Right, well, here we've got the Stereomaster, HMV Stereomaster 2018, which was the first model I did in 1966. This is a record player only, but you can plug an external tuner in through the auxiliary socket, and you can plug a tape recorder or anything else in bi-directionally through the 5-pin DIN, so you can record from it, you can play back into it. Sometimes you see these advertised on eBay for overinflated prices like £2,000, and they say it's a radiogram, and of course it isn't a radiogram, it's what's known as a stereogram, because that mode switch, let's just move the camera, says radio, but that's for an external input. That's where the confusion arises. Now, one thing I will just take extra picture of is the corner damage and the bottom of the case damage there. I don't want the customer to say it was absolutely immaculate when it was dropped here at Tango Towers. So, 1966, and surprise, surprise, when we open it up, it's still got the Garrard 3000 turntable stuff info. Disappointingly, the auto spindle's missing. You got a 3.5mm mono jack cable with these at the time, and it's there, the 3.5mm mono jack cable. That's not to plug your iPad in or your Z phone, it's to plug in a HMV transistor radio with medium and long wave and FM into this product through the radio socket, which is mono 3.5mm. So it is not stereo, it is mono. That's a very important thing to stress. So we'll photocopy that. Useful information. 90 AHC cartridge, and we're going to start by picking the stuff up off the floor that me swishing around with the camera plugged into its mains adapter has caused. Now, where can we put this camera whilst I can still work as well? About there probably. Let's just come out a bit. So I have never done an overhaul on one of these before. Usually they are 2011, 2012 and 2419 models. I don't think we've commercially done any others. So it's those 1971 through to 1976 ones. So, obviously it's a germanium amplifier, it's 7 watts per channel RMS, and what more can we say? We need to say that I own one of these, and I've repaired mine, but I've repaired it, I didn't do an overhaul. Obviously I had to do the turntable. What happened? I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you the story. When my late mother passed away, sadly with motor neuron disease in the year 2000, and I'd lost my fiancée to motor neuron disease when she was just 30. Which, so, you know, seeing that twice wasn't good. I obviously was on the sad side of things. And my grandfather had owned from new, that's on my mother's side, he'd owned the Stereomaster 2026, which is the record player only version that came after this. And I fancied having one just for nostalgia, and having passed away in the 70s, and my mother was the sole inheritor of the estate, and his Reader's Digest record collections, worth nothing, ended up in our household, and subsequently they were the core of my ridiculous collection of over 200 Reader's Digest record collections, some of which might be worth 99 pence. So I get this, how much is it worth? Nothing. How much is one of these worth? Well, one might be 99 pence, and then the next one may have got a £2,500 price tag on it, which they're not going to get. So I bought what I thought was a 2026, but it's got the, you see, the 2026 has got vertical slats, not horizontal ones, and it's the model after this. So I ended up buying a tired looking 2018, and it had been transported at some time in its life with its legs on, which you never do, and one had been smashed off, and so I had to Araldite the mountings back on. So it always looks wonky, but it's pretty stable. And I used it as the sole kind of hi-fi thing before we had the background music system here, and the only thing electronically was it didn't work on one channel, and it turned out to be a duff transistor in the preamp. So I changed capacitors that I had to change, but not things like the main electrolytic, just things that were faulty at the time, and that's now 20 years ago. So when I dig that out, that will have to have a proper overhaul. And I've not seen any of these in this colour before. Every one I've ever seen of all these products has been in teak. So having bored you to suicide, I'll now take this apart. And what we need to do, and we're on Mr. Chippy's bench, I don't know what tools we've got, we need to somehow get out this centre thing. With Mr. Chippy's handy dental tool, that's exactly what we've just done. It's Mr. Super Chip, Super Mega Chippy, isn't it now? So we've got a very interestingly shaped circlip, which I might be able to pull out with my fingers and surgical scissors. We don't want to break this because it helps lock in the auto. There, we've got that out too. And we'll lift off the platter, which is a metal one, just like that. So here's your big problem, and it's absolutely seized solid, is the trigger for the auto mech. So if this was working, and I'm not going to power it up to find out, then the turntable would have, if it had gone round, the arm would get so far, and I can actually feel it, that's as far as it goes, and then there's resistance because that is seized. So that's one of the things which the customer is going to be pleased to have working. So we need to pop off that circlip. Can I do that with my fingers? I can't actually. Nearly, I've got it to move. And we need to manage to get that off. Now, I may well have to apply heat, and that is going to be a situation where we're going to apply heat. I don't want to get the blow lamp out at this stage. I'm going to put the soldering iron on it for about 10 minutes. In the meantime, whilst that's warming up, I'm going to take the circlip off the idler. There's a thrust washer you've got to make sure doesn't fly off. Again, this is pretty stiff. I'm having to pull that up somewhat. So that's the idler, and we'll take the lower thrust washer off. Like that. And I'm going to plonk the soldering iron on the centre spindle for about 10 minutes, if I can just get it to balance there, and I'll come back to it. Okay, well that's not done a thing, so we're going to be using not the hot air gun, not a hairdryer. I'm going to use it in its lowest power setting. The centre spindle's also stuck, so this will hopefully release that as well. I might need to find a cloth to touch this with, because it's going to be a bit hot, isn't it? Let's see whether that's got anywhere. Straight off. Well, that solved that problem. But 9 times out of 10 the soldering iron is sufficient. Now I'm not going to put that red hot cam on the cabinet. So we've got this nasty grease underneath. We're going to put this in the ultrasonic cleaner. I may not even have to strip this down because the ultrasonic cleaners are going to deal with that. So we'll get that out and we'll get that set up. I had to shove that on a chair because there's just nowhere to put something with a size of this thing on the bench. So we're not really geared up to do radiograms, and the idea of the videos is to encourage people who've got a bit of an electronics knowledge and can solder to sort their own out. But we've had 1 or 2 of these in recently. I'm not going to not be helpful, so this is what happens. Okay, we'll come back to that when it's done in 15 minutes. Actually, we'll put some heat on this as well. So whilst that's doing, we'll do this idler. If you can hear me over it. Get a paper towel. I've never put an idler in the ultrasonic cleaner yet. I don't want to melt the customer's one, just in case that would happen. But we'll use isopropyl alcohol again on this. So let's clean that, and whilst we're at it, we'll clean the rim of the platter with isopropyl alcohol. I'm not going to dust his record player, but I will just dust around there for him, because whilst the thing's off, I may as well. Where's the bin in this workshop? There it is. We're going to have to get that out. So we want some oil. So we usually have an aerosol one in the other workshop. But we've got some more ordinary oil. Get another piece of paper. Yeah, I'm going to have to apply some heat to pull that centre out. But what we're going to do is we're going to apply some oil to the bearings. I'm going to put a spot of oil on this paper. And I'm going to go around that shaft. I'm going to go around where the idler is. I'm going to protect the motor shaft, but drop some oil down into the bottom so that it goes into the bearing at the bottom. And just to be sure we've got nothing on there, we're going to put some isopropyl alcohol on that motor shaft. There we go. And hopefully we can put this bit back together. So the thrust washer, the idler, the thrust washer, the circlip, you may have to use pliers, circlip pliers, but I've got exceptionally strong fingers. And that goes around nicely. Could look at the stylus at this point. We need it to the centre. Let's move that over. We want that to the centre, the flag to the centre, and then we can just tilt it, and hopefully it'll come out. I'm going to look at that under the Stylus microscope. He did ask me to get a new stylus, and I've got a new stylus, but we'll see what this is like. Right, that's done. I'll go and get another piece of paper. And there we've got rid of all that nasty grease. Now we're still going to have to take that off because it didn't penetrate the shaft. I was a bit naughty not doing that. So I need to take that circlip off. The top bit, the lower circlip, and the bottom bit, which is absolutely solid in there, and that might be another heat thing, but we'll just see. And that has now pulled out. I'll put that in the ultrasonic cleaner too. We'll get some oil down there. Right, we're looking at the stylus, so I'll go and get the stylus microscope. So when I look under the microscope, the stylus is actually, the diamond is missing from the LP. It's probably got clonked over the years and it is absolutely missing. The 70 is a turnover one, the 78 one is intact. So you may as well have that back. I haven't got the other stylus right here right now with me, so I'm just going to put this back so we can do the weights. As a temporary measure, we're going to do the stylus weight, the stylus pressure. I'll just switch that on. These are readily available for $5.99, as are the little microscopes for stylus use. We want this to be somewhere between, say, 1.6 and 4 grams. It's 4.5, so we'd like to drop the pressure off a bit. At the back of the tone arm is a little knurled wheel. Probably shows it on this diagram. To the back. Now I don't know whether we're going heavier or lighter, so we'll check. 4.6. Just go the other way. 2.3. It's a bit more on. .4. I think we'll try it at that. And put that away. So this model has a wooden bottom with 1,000,000 screws in it, and there was a sharp clonk when I moved that. And do you know what it sounded like? It sounded like the missing auto spindle. Honestly, it really did. Let's get all these screws out and we'll come back to it. Right, I've taken the screws out, so we're going to take this off on video. Hopefully. They're not screws, are they? They are, you know. I think Thorn had a screw factory at the time. Wow, I'm right. Look what's inside. The auto spindle, the missing auto spindle. That can go in the ultrasonic cleaner. Wow. That is a lucky man, because people want an arm and there's a stylus protector there as well for what it's worth. So there's just a few points underneath which we're going to make sure we've got some lubrication, and that's one of them. So Mr. Chippy's we're going to take the amplifier out, and that's what we're going to do right now, and then we're going to run up the turntable, powering it from an extra. We're not going to power this up, you see, because we don't want to switch the amplifier on if it's not been on for decades. The capacitors in these are dodgy at the best of times. So we'll start taking that apart. Don't know why we can't get that out, but we can't. I think it's going to be safest to snip these off because why can't I find any cutters? And then we'll know where they've come from. So that's the power to the turntable. We want to disconnect the speakers in a similar way. I think the best thing to do here is actually to cut the wire in the middle and then to actually put a connector block in. So I think that's the safest thing to do. I think that's what we've done before on the ones which aren't pluggable. So that's that. I'm going to put a knot in that one so we know it's the left-hand channel. So the pickup has to be unsoldered as well. Nothing's plugging on this model. And again, we're going to cut that off and then solder it back on later on. Might be able to unsolder the braid. We'll unsolder one and we'll cut the other. There we go. So that's the pickup disconnector. I'm just going to see why I can't get that out. So I've taken the screws out of the ventilation card. There, take that out. I think we need to take the knobs off. And they pull off. If this was ours, we'd put these through the dishwasher, but it's not ours, so we won't. That actually has a couple of pins holding it into position. So if you were in a position where there's been coffee spilt down there, you need to get those pins out to clean underneath. I'm not sure we're going to do that again, it's not ours. So, I may have to look at the service manual as to what we have to take out next to get the amplifier out. So I think they're 4BA these. What's my nut runner say? Anyway, it's what fits. We had these back in the television days when you needed to take the CRT out to change it on black and white tellies. So that's seen some use over the years. I can't remember whether on this one we've got to dislodge the turntable to actually get the chassis out. So I'll pause the video. And there's two more 4BA nuts at this angle going through the chassis into the base. That's those. If I can find the other one. Here we go. I'll just lift this around. Hopefully, chassis should come out. There we go, it does. So this will be part 2 doing the chassis. Mr. Chippy will be doing that. Full of those nasty black capacitors. I can see a split and gunk coming out of one straight away. So put that to one side. What I want to do to conclude this video is power up the turntable. So All I've done here is to put a chock block connector onto our fused mains lead straight to the motor. That's it. Now we're going to turn it up onto its front and see what happens. So now we've got the auto spindle, we'll take out the manual spindle and put that in the space provided. Good! Isn't that nice? Right, we'll power it up. Press manual. Oh, we have to plug it in, don't we? So once it cycles a few times, the lubrication will go into it. So that's running fine. I will just get a record. I think we've got some 10-inch ones lurking. But what's going to happen is when the Stylus goes on the record, it's probably going to skid all over the place because it's the only Stylus in there is a 78 one, and this is an LP. It's an old LP, and we use this for test purposes with it being 10-inch to check that the alignment of the put down mechanism actually puts it down in the right place. It should auto sense the size of the record, so let's give it a go. So this first time I'm just going to have to help that because it's lubrication's not in there yet. Oh. There we go, and it's gone right across the record as you expect. And let's see whether it's got the strength to pick it up at the end. Not yet. So it's picking up and putting down in the right place, so there's been no adjustment, nobody's fiddled with it. There's nothing worse than somebody fiddling with everything there is to fiddle with. I think what we'll just do, we'll put it on 78 and that will get some lubrication in there quite quickly at that kind of speed. So we'll let his auto pick up at that speed. And let it do it again. And the lubrication doesn't settle down, well, we'd do a bit more. Right, let's go to 33. And we'll just see whether we're anywhere near it being able to cycle on its own. And the answer is yes. It was a bit sluggish, but you can see it's getting there. So let it pick up at the end, see whether it can manage to do that. I'm going to have to move that across manually because there's no stylus, as you know. Yeah, I'm satisfied that's going to be about right. And what we'll also just do is put the speed platter on. I'll take the record off so that it can grip. Put it on manual. Now we've got LED lighting in here. We've got a fluorescent here, and I can see. So let's just explain this. You've got 33 in those two bands, you've got 45 in those two bands, you've got 78 in those two bands. The outer ring is 60 Hz mains, the inner ring is 50 Hz mains. We're in the UK, it's 50 Hz. So it should be the second one, the fourth one and the sixth one. So 33 is where we started, and that's more or less how it should be. Let's move it to, I'll put that down because it's in the way. Let's go over to 45. As you can see, that's virtually stationary. Then we'll go over to 78, and that's virtually stationary. So it's pretty near. There we go. So that winds up part 1 of the HMV Stereomaster 2018, and Mr. Chippy will be getting on with the electronics. Thank you for watching.